So my parents taught my sister and I something when we were pretty young. It was this mantra: people who listen get more privileges. And so it was usually my dad who said it just like that, in that funny little voice. And eventually it became kind of a family idiom or a family proverb, because basically anytime anyone would say, people who listen, we knew exactly what they were telling us. But here's the thing that our parents didn't teach us. It's that sometimes listening isn't enough. So 4 years ago, I was hitting emotional rock bottom, and I was depressed, got dumped, had no job, and I was pretty unsure about just about everything. So I decided on a whim that I would start a little experiment to practice extreme listening. And by extreme listening, what I mean is not just a good listener, but 100% there, fully present. Nothing else in the world matters in that moment. And besides, my parents had taught me, people who listen. So after 1,000 of these experimental, extreme listening conversations, here's my biggest takeaway. The best listeners are also the most selfish listeners. So every day we're all in conversations where we zone out. Basically, we hear people that are saying these things, but we don't really care that much. And we let them go on and on and on and on and on. And we mentally click out. But the opposite is also true, because the same thing happens when we are talking. And this is how we know. When we're talking to somebody else, basically, they respond to us with something that tells us that they're not listening. And we all know what something like that is. It's a piece of unhelpful advice. It's something that they say that totally is disconnected from what we were just saying. And it's because what we're saying isn't interesting to them. Think about it. How can we be engaged when we're not interested? So, I have a little bit, something that you can try. What if, in your next conversation, you try to just ask the next question that you are most interested in? And here's how I do it. Or rather, here's how I did it for 1,000 of those conversations. It might go something like this. So the next person you're talking to, just say, hey, is there something that you've been thinking about that I could maybe help you think a little bit better about? It could be a professional thing or a personal thing. It could be a big thing or a small thing. It could be something in the past. It could be something in the present. Or it could be something future-related. Whatever it is, the only thing that matters is that it's something that matters to you. And so let's put a time lock on that, maybe 10 minutes. And I'll be a great listener. I'll ask some good questions. And you just be open and honest, and we'll see how far we can get in those 10 minutes. What do you think? Would you like to give this a try? And so when you actually do have one of these conversations, you'll find that when you only have 10 minutes, you pretty much have to ask the question that you're most interested in hearing the answer to. Otherwise, you're going to run out of time. And here's the thing. When you do end up asking the question that you most want to ask, not only will you stick around and hear the answer, but also you might help that person to say something that they've never said before. Or the two of you might go somewhere that neither of you have ever been before. And that is unexpected love. Offering somebody the opportunity to talk about something that they really care about. Being a great listener and asking some good questions. And seeing where that's all going to go without any expectation. Because most people don't do that. So I've been doing this conversation experiment for a few years now, but there is a couple of conversations that really always come back to me, and one in particular is this conversation that I had with my friend Leslie. So Leslie and I have known each other for a pretty long time, and she was visiting Beijing. She came over for lunch. So we got catching up on all the good stuff, the good, the bad, the ugly that was happening over the past couple of years since the last time that we'd seen each other. And so our conversation was coming up, for about 2 hours. And I was like, hey, Leslie, I've been working on this conversation experiment, and I was wondering if you'd like to give it a go. Basically, you talk about something that matters to you. I'm a great listener. I ask some good questions. And we keep it to 10 minutes, and we see how far we can get in that time. What do you think? Would you like to give it a try? She said, sure. So over the next 10 minutes, we had this awesome conversation. And we were talking about this thing that clearly she had thought a lot about, and it seemed like she may have not really had a chance to talk to anybody about it. So when we got to 10 minutes, I asked her, hey, what was that like? What was that experience like for you? And she said, MCK, we went further in those 10 minutes than we went in the entire 2 hours of our conversation. That was so helpful, and I am super grateful. Thank you. Look, we always spend all of this time talking about things that don't actually matter to us. What happens if in your next conversation you offer that opportunity to talk about something that matters to that person that you happen to be talking to in that moment? And before you run away and you have that conversation, a few things to keep in mind. First, offer that opportunity to talk about something that matters to the next person that you talk to. Be a great listener and ask some good questions by asking the questions that you actually want to hear the answer to. The best listeners are the most selfish listeners, but they're also the most interested, the most engaged, and the most helpful. The best conversations that we have are not the ones when you're the most interesting, they're the ones where you're the most interested. So, will you be selfish in your next conversation? Thank you.